What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to our new live stream. Today, we're gonna learn about Expo Modules and we're gonna build a native libraries for React Native using Expo Modules API. Today, we're gonna learn about what are Expo Modules, what are native libraries, why do we need them, how to create, how to understand the concepts behind them. And later in the video, we are actually going to get our hands dirty and implement some native libraries, including native modules for some functionalities, native views to render something natively on the screen, and also some libraries that wrap around some pre-existing native libraries for Android and iOS. But before we do that, let's quickly have an overview of how React Native works, and that will help us understand why do we need these Expo modules. First of all, let's go back to how React Native works. So React Native, even though we are writing our user interface using JavaScript, this might give an impression to some people that this is not native. But let's focus on the native part of React Native. Because in fact, all the JavaScript components that we are using, they are simple wrappers around some native components in most cases. For example, when we are rendering a text component from React Native, that is a simple wrapper around an Android native text view and an iOS UI text view. And that's similar to the rest of the components that we are using. Most of them are actually transform, or they are a gateway towards the native or the platform views and functionalities. And here I want to mention that there are the things that we see on the screens, these are usually called native views because we are rendering and we are viewing them. But there are also libraries that do not render anything. For example, the location library. That one is not a native view, that is a simple native module. So here I want to make this distinction to help you understand better later when we're going to talk about native modules and native views. So yeah, behind the scenes, React Native is transforming them to an Android native text or image, depending on what you're rendering, and on iOS to an iOS text or image. When we're building applications, we can use a lot of native views provided by the React Native itself, together with native modules. Sometimes we need more functionalities, and in that situations, we can go ahead and use a lot of pre-built or a lot of modules that are supported and maintained by Expo, such as Expo Camera, for example. Expo has a lot of packages and libraries. And if you cannot find something neither in React Native or Expo, in that case, you go ahead and look for something that is maintained by the community, some open source projects. For example, the Vision Camera is an example of this kind of open source library that provides you with native functionalities. But even in that case, sometimes you might need very custom native code for your application. And in that case, you need to basically drop down to the native platform and write some code for the native platform and make it available to your JavaScript side, to the React Native side. In that case, we have to build native modules. React Native has the native modules system with a new architecture. They are called Turbo Native modules, and for the views, they are Fabric Native components. But we are actually going to look at the Expo, at the system that is designed by Expo for building native modules. And here I'm talking about Expo Modules API. So yeah, that was a little bit of introduction, and now we're gonna go ahead and go through the documentation of Expo Modules API and get our hands dirty and practice, learn everything by doing, by trying to build some Expo native modules. And here I would like to mention a quick disclaimer. This is actually the first time that I'm gonna get my hands on the Expo Modules API. So it's going to be a learning process both for me and for yourself. We're gonna follow the documentation. I'm going to provide a little bit more context of how I understand these things, but most probably there will be some challenges because I don't have a lot of experience with native code, Kotlin, Swift, UI. So it's going to be challenging, but an interesting. I expect it to be an interesting and valuable for you video that we can follow together and learn based on Expo Modules documentation. If you're ready, I think we can get started. But before that, let me quickly say hello to everyone who are joining us live. How are you doing, guys? Hello, Ariel. Hello, Aditya, Jack, Graham, Infant. Hello, Vladimir. Can a MacBook M3 handle the development that you do? Definitely. Even I don't have a MacBook, an M3. M2 Pro can handle iOS and Android simulators work at the same time. I'm pretty sure it can. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start going through the documentation. So what are Expo modules? As I was explaining, they allow us to write, to extend the capabilities of our application and write custom native code that helps us tap into the native platform's API. So from design consideration, the Expo Modules API, they are using Swift for iOS and Kotlin for Android. I don't have experience with neither of them, but I don't think that's going to be a challenge. In any case, sometimes we can simply use ChatGPT or go through Kotlin and Swift documentation to find out more about that. And based on the React Native new architecture, the only thing that we need to be aware of is that Expo Modules API, they are render agnostic, meaning that they are renderer agnostic, meaning that an Expo Module API will work both on the new architecture that is using the Fabric renderer and on the old architecture that is using Paper renderer. If that doesn't ring a lot of bells, don't worry. That basically means that if we build an Expo Module API, it's going to work in both scenarios, in both situations. And here it mentions about the native views. I'm not exactly sure about native modules, but yeah, we're gonna see it today. So let's go ahead and getting started. So the thing is that there are two ways to create an Expo module. We can either initialize a module inside an existing application, or we can no, I was, where is it? Come on, go back. Get started. Yeah, there are two recommended flows. We can either add a new module to an existing Expo application. So for example, you're building your application, at some point you need to write some custom code. You can create a local native modules and dive deeper into that native code. Or the second approach would be to create a new module, an isolated module, and then import it in your application. In that case, this solution is great, like if you need the same module in multiple projects, or if you also intend to publish it and open source it. And in this documentation, we see how we can add new modules to an existing application, and the only thing that we have to do is use the -- local. We are gonna actually start doing that in a moment, but I think I'm gonna skip the get started and go into a tutorial right away. Here, let's just see what we have to work with. And creating a module as a separate project, we simply call the same method without dash local. So here, is just a simple get started guide, but I would like to go into the first tutorial called create a native module and follow this documentation to create my actual first native modules. So in this tutorial, we're going to build a native module that stores the user preferred application theme, either dark, light, or system. For that, we're going to use the user defaults, which on iOS is a system to store some data, and this is for iOS, and share preferences for Android that is also used to store these kind of preferences. So the tutorial doesn't show how to implement it on web, but we can also add web support by using local storage. So okay, that's good. Let's go ahead and start by initializing the module. For that, we're going to use the npx create expo module, expo setting. So let's go ahead in our terminal, navigate to where you keep your projects, and let's paste this code. I think I also like to always use the @latest, because the first time you're going to use the create expo module, that is going to install the latest version, but later it might use a cached version. So I always like to add the @latest when using npx. It asks me to install the create expo module because I don't have it yet. Let's press yes. And it's going to create a module called expo settings. When we should use native modules? Good question. We should use native modules when we need to extend the capabilities of our application and we depend on some platform-specific APIs. Usually, as I said, I never needed actually, like when building application, to drop down to the native side, because in most cases I find some open source packages and I'd rather use them. But sometimes the application has very specific needs, and in that case, maybe an open source package is not something that you need or doesn't fulfill all the requirements of your project, and in that case, you might need to build it yourself. Some very basic example that you can think of is, let's say you need to work with maps in React Native. You can go ahead and use React Native maps, but if you need something more specific, maybe you'd write a custom native code that would integrate on iOS with their native maps, on Android with their native maps, and add the functionalities there on the native side. Or some cryptography, or let's say something that another very common use case is when you find the library that you need, but it's a native library for Android, and you find a similar one for iOS. What you can do is create a native module that would wrap around these two libraries for iOS and Android and expose their functionality to React Native. That is also another use case that you might need to write a native module. Anyway, going back, we are asked what is the name of the npm package. Let's go with expo settings. What is the native module name? Expo settings. I'm gonna leave everything like this because I don't intend to publish it anywhere, so I think the defaults will be okay for me. Now we are waiting to install everything. And then we're gonna simply open it in Visual Studio Code and look through the files that it was generated there. Okay, something didn't work, I guess, which is not a very good start. Not sure what happened, but anyway, I'm gonna open the Expo settings, the project. I'm gonna open it in Visual Studio Code, and let me check here what happened. I would guess that it worked correctly, but to double check that, I will open a new terminal. And I would go ahead and write npm install again to make sure that we install the packages again. And I see that doesn't seem to be present in your log file. Add it under homepage entry in the package.json. Expo module script exists, not updating. Homepage. So it says something, but no. And I'm seeing something like yarn install. Why did it assume that I'm using yarn? But which package? Internal workspace. Let's try to do remove node modules and also the package log file to reinstall the packages from scratch here. After that is done, I can do clear and I will try again an npm install. If that doesn't work, I'm gonna try with yarn. These are just warnings. So far, so good. And no, it doesn't want internal something. This package doesn't seem to be present in yarn install. They don't even understand which package. This one? Let's try that with yarn. Again, removing node modules and package.log and then yarn install. Let's see if that is going to change anything. Okay, with yarn it worked. Maybe it even worked with npm and I should have just continued. But anyway, let's continue with yarn if it wants it this way. So let's have a look at a couple of files that it generated. We have a source directory, and this is the source file of our Expo module. Because we developed our module separate, like as an independent project outside of an Expo application, it also gave us an example application that we can run to test out our native module. So in app.tsx, it's as we can see, it's actually importing the Expo settings, which is our custom native modules that we generated here, and it's calling this hello function. I think I would like to actually try to run this application to see it working, and then continue editing it based on our needs. So to run it, what I have to do is first I have to run the build command inside the root directory, and because we are using yarn for some reason, I'm gonna go and run yarn build in the root directory. Didn't want to do that. Oh, why? Package that in the package, if I check here in the scripts, build is going to be Expo module build. And why you didn't want to do it? Is it because I'm using Node.js version 20? Sometimes that can also be the problem. I know that it's not recommended to mix and match yarn and npm, but I'm just gonna push for it, you know? Expo module command not found. Yeah, boy. It's not very exciting beginning, but that's... Let me check the documentation. King is asking, when you say native module, are we building a library for React Native or native things like Kotlin and Swift? We are building a library for React Native, but it's a native library. So we're going to write some Kotlin code that is going to be executed when we run our React Native application on Android. And we're going to write some Swift code that is going to be running on iOS when our React Native application is running on iOS devices. So we are building a React native library. Yeah, I'm also thinking maybe the problem was something about Node version. So nvm what would be change nvm change Node version? Would it be use nvm use? I think it was even like nvm ls default version 18. Let's try 18. And now Node version, it's again 20. But if I'm gonna close and open the terminal, I mean close it completely and open it again and do Node version, that's gonna be 18. So let's see if on 18 it's gonna work. Should I try with yarn build? Expo module not found. Let's go ahead and try to, I'm gonna remove some folders here to try back to try back the npm install. npm install. Would really love to continue with npm. Should we use Expo for apps like Instagram? Oh, you deleted that. Please work, let's go. Okay, the comment is back. Should we use Expo for apps like Instagram, or in that case, better going to be use React Native CLI to avoid potential problem? What potential problem? I always recommend going with Expo nowadays because there are no potential problems. Maybe in the past, and when I'm using the correct, the version 18 at this moment of Node.js, everything work with npm. So let's try the npm build command, unknown build, npm run build. Okay, everything good. Our library is being built. Basically, the TypeScript side is being built. And did it finish? Oh, no. Compilation. I think it was built because and it's watching, like if we're gonna change something, it's going to rebuild it. But now it's time to go ahead and go into the example folder, and this is a example of Expo application. Let's do cd example, and here we're gonna have to run this application on iOS. To do that, we're gonna use npx expo. Is it correct? Yes, npx expo run iOS, and this will build. We should build and run the project on iOS. But I don't see in the example the package.json. That's very true. It's probably, it should take it from here. Expo. Let me go back to get started and check this one. npm run open Android. Should I be here and using this package? Prepare open iOS. Okay, let's do npm run open iOS from the root of our module folder. That will probably trigger and open this application in Xcode. It's not gonna run it yet, but it's gonna open it in Xcode. And the file example iOS does not exist. Come on. Okay, let's nuke this one. Try from scratch. From the get started, let's go to creating a new module with an example Let's start with this. npx create expo module, my module. My example folder is incorrect. For some reason it was not correct, right? Yeah, it should contain the iOS and Android folders as well as the source. Thank you, Rokas. I don't know why that happened. Maybe it was because previously I had the node 20 and it gave me some errors. Let's try right now with I'm reusing the same terminal. So wait a second. This terminal is also using node version 20, so I'd have to restart it. Let's do it now. Create Expo module, my module. Target directory, yes. It's not empty. Yeah, because I already have something there. So let me go ahead and I'm gonna remove both of them to clean the folder where I'm working in. Now we can try again. I'm gonna go with all the defaults. Aman is saying I work on an enterprise application. When the application starts, there are more than 20 API calls in Saga and multiple Redux store dispatches, and the just thread drops to -2 to the 2 FPS for 2-3 seconds. Create a video managing Saga and Redux. To be honest, I don't have a lot of experience with Saga and Redux, so I'm not sure how good of a tutorial I'm gonna do. And I'm not very excited about these technologies to dive into them and learn them. I remember the older version of Expo has been awful for applications that have native modules. Well, probably like 4 years ago, there were some limitations when it came to Expo applications and native modules. Because if you needed native modules back then, 4 years ago, just to explain that, what you had to do is basically eject out of Expo and continue using React Native CLI. Nowadays, Expo developed the Expo modules and a lot of tools that allows you to write native code. So anytime you are installing a library, for example, that has native code, in that case, yes, you cannot use Expo Go, but you can simply create a development client, which is basically a custom Expo Go application that contains all the necessary native code that your application depends on. So there is no limitations nowadays for Expo, and a lot of things are much easier to manage, maintain, and update. So that's why I will always recommend it. But my application, my module has been initialized. Initialized. Let's go ahead and open it in Visual Studio Code. And now if I look at the example, okay, now this looks like a proper Expo application that is used to showcase or to test our module that we initialize with name my module. That's why let's go ahead and in the root, let's go ahead and build npm run build. And then let's go ahead and open the iOS project. I'm not even sure that I need to open it in we can go ahead and do npm run open iOS, npm run open iOS, and this will go ahead and start Xcode with a example iOS directory. Let's see if Xcode is starting. Come on, Xcode. Here it is. Here is Xcode. Xcode. And if we look under the example project, there will be probably libraries. No? My module example. And this is the code for that module, right? Maybe, I don't know. What we can do is, we can run it from here from Xcode, but we can also go ahead and do cd example. And from the example folder, we can do npx expo run iOS. And this will run it from our terminal without us having to open Xcode at all. And we're going to be able to do the same for Android. We're going to do that in a second. Should I try to do it at the same time in a different terminal? Let's see if my PC will hold it. Let's go into the example again, and using npx expo, let's run this example application on Android. If you're working on Windows, you're not going to be able to test and run it on iOS. So that's something to keep in mind. On a macOS, you have access to both Android and iOS simulators. I'm gonna keep the Android here out of the screen, but when it finishes building, I'm gonna show it to you. Native here means Kotlin Swift, right? Not C++ or Rust. Yeah, when building Expo modules, using Expo Modules API, we are using Kotlin and Swift, correct? Is it good to memorize whole flat list and callbacks in React Native applications? It's good to do that only for the ones that has to be memorized or the ones that are expensive, because if you memorize everything, that's also not the best approach, because memorizing something, you are exchanging time for memory. So your application is going to use way more memory just to keep track of everything that you memorized. And in a lot of components, they take less time to be rendered than always being checked like with a memorized value. So that's why I'd rather recommend having a look at and trying to understand what are the problematic views or components that are very heavy on rendering, maybe simplify them and only memorize things that that take a lot of performance to re-render, let's say. So it looks like today we're going to to do a lot of waiting for native side things to be built. Maybe we're gonna try to do most of the things in one single project, not to create new stuff over and over again. But while that is happening, maybe we can go ahead and look at some of the code that we have for this template of a module. So if we open the source directory, starting from index.ts, this is a TypeScript file. What does it have here? Oh, come on. For the native modules on the web, it will be resolved to my module web. Okay. On native platform to my module.ts. My module.ts, this one. So this is kind of the interface of our module. That expose TypeScript, or let's say JavaScript functions that are mapped to the module functions. Our application the example application has finished building for iOS. So let's press here open. And as we can see, this is a custom development build, because If you're working with Expo, you know about Expo Go, and in a lot of cases we are using Expo Go. The thing is that now we are, in our example project, we are using custom native code. When we have custom native code, we no longer can use Expo Go because Expo Go has a limited set of native code and libraries that most application needs. But whenever we have custom native code, we simply create a development client, and our application now already has the iOS directory and the Android directory that if we build and run, as you can see there, they are being opened in a completely separate application. My module example. It's very similar to Expo Go, but it's your custom version of Expo Go. So you can also like interact, like reload and so on. If we look at the app.tsx of our example application, the text that we see here, this text is actually coming from the module, the custom module that we have built, that we have initialized. And we are importing this module in our React Native example application, and we are calling a function hello. This function hello returns a string. So on iOS, it returns this string. That's the same is going to happen on Android. But I see that for Android, what? Did it fail? Don't tell me. Android plugin requires Java to run. You're currently using Java 11. Okay, that probably is going to give me some headaches. But I can try to go back in the root directory and do npm run open Android. Maybe from Android Studio is going to allow me to update my Android. I don't even remember what was the problem there. But some Android, trust the project. I don't remember when is the last time I was interacting with Android Studio, so. Okay. So I have to update my JDK version. Anyone experienced with how would that the Java version? What's the process of updating it? Where was the error? I lost the error. Should I just ignore Android? But that's not the point. The point is to test it and to show it both on Android and iOS. So in the environment setup, let's see the development environment for React Native CLI, for macOS and Android. What we need is Java Development Kit that we can install using this command. So let's try that, and hopefully we're not gonna break anything. So starting with this command. And then Mario is asking the estimated release date of a premium course. We don't have the estimated date yet, but I'm working very hard on the project. Actually, I have already the 3 projects ready for 2.5, ready for the course. Where is it? So yeah, I'm working on a huge course focused on React Native and Expo applications. And the course is going to teach all of these concepts together with React fundamentals, React Native fundamentals, styling, Expo router, of course, Expo workflows with custom development clients, and platform APIs, networking to get data and manage it, setting up all the environment, and basically learning everything about React Native and Expo to build applications. Of course, we are doing that through projects. So the course is going to contain around 7 projects. 3 of them I already have ready. I just have to finish the most challenging part about building a course is to structure the information in a natural way, so that you start small, and as you build application, you learn new things, you add to your workflow. At the same time, not having huge jumps in complexity, because at that time students will find difficult and challenges, and also you don't want to repeat a lot of stuff, so you need to carefully craft all of these projects to make sure that they are increasing in complexity and they would be valuable for beginners, but at the same time valuable to people who already have experience and they want to get to the next level. So that's why the first 2 are more like fundamentals, and then we get into really advanced stuff. So yeah, that's where I'm currently at. We are working hard on it, and we are probably going to have the wait list open quite soon. So that's going to be the first step to make sure that you guys can join the waitlist if you are interested. Let me know in the comments if you would be interested in this course. And if I see a lot of people, I'm gonna rush the team to have a waitlist page as soon as possible up and running. When it will be releasing? It's going to be this year, but I don't have a lot of details yet. Let's continue with messing up with our environment. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to install this the next command in the React Native environment setup documentation. Oh, that's nice. How do I know what version do I currently have? Java version. It's 11. So very, very old. I need to be on 17. But yeah, that's the power of using Expo on this. In a lot of cases, we don't need to get down to this low level where, let's say, native side is not actually low level. I never liked very much the native side, especially for Android. So it's installing Zulu. Let me do that. Okay, it was installed successfully. Then we can take the install path using that command. Where is it? Here, is it this one? To double click the installer. Okay. I need to double click the installer. What? Two files from here. Which one is the installer? First one? So I just took the URL that I saw here, the path to where it was installed, and I did open in that path to open it in my files. And from here, I'm gonna double click the installer. I'm gonna go ahead and install it. Let's go. And after you install the JDK, update your Java home environment variable. If you use the above steps, the JDK will be at this. Hopefully it will. Let me check if that's true. If I do ls, yeah, I see that there is this kind of path. And now to update the Java home. Probably that would be in my ZSHR here somewhere. Source, where is Android home? Android home, but I need the Java home. So the question is, where is my Java home environment variable? Oh, I didn't have to do anything, and it was updated. And if I open a new terminal and do Java version, it's 17. So I hope it worked. I cannot be sure, but I'll just continue. Let's give it a try to build for Android again. Where I am. It shouldn't be here. It should be in the project directory. Then we're gonna go into the example. Java version is 17. That means that we can do npm run npx expo run Android. This will build and should try to run the application on Android emulator. Maybe even my Android Studio is outdated. That's also possible. So far, so good. I'm gonna close. come on. Now, as you can see, my module is being built. And yeah, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna wait. Hopefully it's not gonna take a lot of time. I'm gonna wait just to see everything on Android, and then we're gonna go through the files and see what's going on there. Thanks for helping, guys, in the comments. Appreciate that. Very close. Okay, so I see the application finished building for Android, and now it's bundling, and in a second we should see. All right, so all good, and now we have our basic Hello World native module running both for iOS and on Android as well. Okay, as we saw, now let's go ahead and look into some files to understand what do we have there, to know where we're gonna work to change our native library. So starting with the index.tx, in the source, that's the source code of our native module. Here, it's importing the native module. On the web, it will be simply resolved to this my module web, which simply exports a constant, a function, set value, and the hello function. So 3 things: pi, set value, and hello. That means that if we go into our example, if we go into the app.tsx, we saw how we can take hello, but we should also be able to say that the pi value is, I believe, my module.pi. Okay, as you can see, we can access like variables, we can access functions, and there is also one more function there. Okay, let's go back to the index. On native platforms to my module.ts. So on web is going to be resolved to this function. On native Android and iOS, it's going to be resolved to this file. This file is using a method require native module from Expo module core, and based on the comment, this function basically is handling the the changes between the old and new architecture. So it's going to load either the GSI if it's running on new architecture, or if there is no GSI, it's going to fall back to the bridge module from the old architecture. So it's a simple wrapper around a wrapper that is exposing our module for both old and new architecture. What else? We have types. These are probably the TypeScript types that help us provide the type safety to our native module, and this is something very important. And in the past, with old architecture, old native modules, that was a source of a lot of errors. And what else? We have native view, and that's it. But where is the code for actually like the native code? Because we only have like this code. The code for the native package, I think, is part of iOS somewhere there, and Android also there. For that reason, we can go ahead and write npm run open Android. Maybe I'm gonna do open iOS. Just let's try to change like what is being rendered on iOS compared to Android. And here in Xcode, do you know how to zoom it in? Okay, the code I can zoom, but the user interface I cannot. It's a bit bad. We have here the my module example, and we have a pods. Where is going to be? Yeah, I think under the pods there is development pods, and there should be the my module. Yes, there is the folder my module, and here we have the file my module and the my module view. If I look into the my module file, that should be our native code for our module. I hope that that's the right place where we should edit it. Anyone knows if you should edit the code through the pods directory? For example, I see here the function hello. So let's do hello world from iOS, save. And I would have to what? Rebuild. I would have to do cd example npm run npx expo run iOS. Yeah, that's correct. Thank you, Lemon Kush. For some reason, I stopped this one, but now it rebuilt much faster than the first time. And I think, yeah, we see hello world from iOS. On Android, that should be the same hello world here. If I will reload, it should still be hello world. We can do the same changes for Android by opening our project in Android Studio. So for that, we're gonna run npm run open Android. Let's see how we can do changes in Android as well. I need to rebuild. I think that by doing npx expo run iOS, that was rebuilding, no? Build succeeded. So yeah, like after doing the changes there, we need to rebuild it. Now here is the Android. How to do the changes on Android. On Android, is it project? Is it packages? Maybe under packages, we have module. Project files, extensions. Nope. I found it under the actual example application source main and so on, and then I found the modules, and then I found the main activity and the main application. Is this where it's happening or no? I don't think it's here. App source main, yeah. My module example. Application source main. Find in files, hello world. It's not here. Okay, let's look for documentation. Running the example, open Android, okay. You can run the example project on your device. When the project runs, you will see hello world on the screen. Making a change on Android, open my module in Android Studio. Here, Command O, and I don't find it for some reason. My module. Maybe I'm not looking at the right project, you know? Let me try to do it again. npm run open Android. And here, let's try to do Command O. And my module, cannot find it. Is this a problem? Is the view outdated? Maybe my Android Studio is outdated, to be honest. How long will it take? Should I search in VS Code? In VS Code, it should be under Android, probably application, source, main, Java, main activity. No, these are the main activity. Let's search here, my module .kotlin. It's under Android, source, main, Java, Expo module, my module. Oh, it's in the, okay. It's in the root Android, not in the example Android. Root Android. That's right. Because the example is just the example of a project. And the same thing for iOS, it's this iOS that is being changed. Okay, and Android here in my module, it doesn't properly show the Kotlin code, but I can find here hello, and I can do hello world from Android. And if I, for example, I'm gonna go ahead and download in the background Android Studio, but probably I'm gonna also be able to run this without it by going ahead in cd example and doing npx expo run Android. This will rebuild my Android example project. And it should, come on, where is it? Should be here. But that's the first learning. The native code for our package lives under the iOS directory here, and for Android it's here under the Android. In the example, that's the example project that is using this native module that we are building. So here, hello world from Android. Here is hello world from iOS. That basically means that we successfully are using a native module in our React Native application. We are simply calling the hello function and letting the code that was written for the platform manage and return the necessary string. That's the power of React Native, because with this we can dive, or we can access like a specific code on the native platforms. And even at the moment, that's simply returning a string, so that's not, it doesn't necessarily have to be on the native side. It can be simply with a platform check from React Native side, but that means that it opens the doors for us to interact with platform APIs or with native libraries on Android and iOS. So, okay, that was quite a rough start. But that was actually expected. Like every time I have to work with native side, it's rough. But that's part of a process and part of a learning process. So let's continue. And what we are gonna do is we're gonna go ahead to back to the Expo documentation. And in the getting started guide, we understood like what we have to do for Android. Like when we have to change things, we modify the my module, the Kotlin file there, and for iOS, the my module Swift. If we add new native files, we need to install the pods using pod install inside the example directory, or we have to rebuild the application and we should see the changes. Okay. Perfect. Let's go ahead to the first tutorial, create a native module. So in this tutorial, we're going to build a native module that stores the preferred application theme, dark or light or system. And for iOS, we're going to use user defaults. For Android, share preferences. I'm not going to initialize a new module. I'm going to continue most of the stuff to do here because it takes a bit of time to create a new module, to build it. So I'm gonna use the same one. So it's not gonna be called Expo settings in my case, it's going to be called my module. So first step is to clean up the default module a little bit so we have more of a clean slate. And yeah, so what we have to delete is from the iOS folder, the view.swift. So from iOS, we need the my module view.swift. Let's remove it because our module right now is not going to have any native view. We're going to get to that in the next step, but first it's going to be simple native module, not a native view. Okay. For Android, we need to, from Android, we need also the view.kotlin to remove. So let's open Android, source, Java, and the my module view.kotlin, let's delete it. Again, we don't need a view at this moment. From the source, we're also going to delete the view.tsx and the settings types. And the types, view web, and so let's go step by step. We are going to delete the view.tsx from the source. Let's open the source. And let's do the view.tsx, this one. We're gonna delete, we don't need it. Similar to the one for the web. View.web.tsx, we don't need it. And we need to delete the types, right? Expo settings types. Types.tsx, we don't need it. Why? And the web module as well. So this one as well. So we are left with only two files in the source, the index and my module. Hopefully I deleted only the files that I have to delete, but let's continue. Now find the following file and replace them with a provided minimal boilerplate. In the iOS for the Expo setting module Swift, let's get this boilerplate. This is Swift code. We can do that here by going to iOS, my module Swift, and I'm going to replace this with this one. And in my case, the name of my module is my module. So make sure to update it here. The same thing with the name that we specified inside here. So it should be my module. This is one way to change that. Another way would be to open it doing npm open iOS. And if we open the iOS, go to the pods, and we go here and do some changes here, they would automatically be updated here. We see some changes. And in some cases, you're going to get better IntelliSense working with Swift inside Xcode. Okay. So we created the name of the module, my module, and we define a function called getTheme that will return a string, and this is the value that we return. Nice. We should do the same with the Android side. So let's copy this boilerplate and let's go into the Android source Java my module Kotlin. And here I'm gonna remove everything and paste the minimal boilerplate. Again, let me update from Expo settings module to my module. Similar here for the name in our module definition, we're gonna call it my module. This is very important because that's how we are accessing it by this name. And we define a function here in Kotlin called getTheme that will return the word system, the string system. Again, here I don't have Kotlin even highlighting for Kotlin syntax, so it would be better to do open Android, but in my case, have an older version of Android Studio, so I'm not sure if it will work for me. My module, yeah, I don't know what's happening here. So meanwhile, in the background, I'm gonna upgrade Android Studio. And we're gonna update like the Kotlin file for Visual Studio Code. Okay, so we have like this minimal module that has only one function called getTheme, and we implemented it both on Android using the Kotlin file and iOS using the Swift file. Now it's time to integrate it on the JavaScript, or expose it to the JavaScript side. And we're gonna do that in the source index.ts. Let's copy this code and let's go to the source index.tx. And out of everything that we have here, this is going to be the minimal code. Let's make sure we are using the correct name. My module, and here my module.getTheme. So here we are exposing to the JavaScript side a function getTheme that will call the getTheme function on the native side module. Perfect. So the last step is to go into the our example application, app.tsx, and our module will no longer have this py, and the TypeScript already knows about that, and it will no longer have this hello. What it will have is the getTheme. So yeah, we're gonna say that the theme is going to be my module.getTheme function. Okay, let's go ahead and run the example project. I think we have to rebuild it, but I have it here, so probably it's rebuilding automatically because it's watching for files, it doesn't have any errors. And the last is 32. Yeah, it was rebuilt just now. Come on. Yeah, let's then go into the example directory. I'm already here, and let's do npx expo run iOS, for example, and in another folder I'm going to do it again for run Android. Something went wrong. For Android it went wrong, and for iOS it also. Did you forget to declare this file as an output of a script phase in the my module from project pods? What? So for iOS, for example, should I try to pre-build it again, the example, or should I try to do pod install? Okay, and let's try the npx run iOS again, because we updated some files in our custom module. Hello everyone, I just arrived. Is this live made for developers wanting to create a React Native component library? I wouldn't put a lot of expectation on this live stream, because during this live stream, I myself am learning about native modules. But yeah, using the Expo modules, you can build component libraries if you want to have them native component libraries, because you can have also component libraries on the JavaScript side. And yes, now as we can see, our myModule.getTheme is returning us the hard-coded string system that we have wrote under the iOS myModule.Swift. Here for the getTheme function, we said return simply system. And for Android, what happened on Android there? Probably it should also be, I'm not sure how to let's try again npx Expo on Android. For iOS, I just simply reinstalled pods. For Android, I'm not sure what is the process there. Build failed. Expo myModule class. Where is that? Android source. Java myModule. I will try to do the following. I'm gonna do npx expo pre-build, and this will regenerate, in the example, it will regenerate the Android and iOS folder. And maybe that will take the new updates that I have done. And after that, npx expo run Android, that will actually build and use it. So let's see. Or maybe I have a typo. Daniel is saying, currently I'm watching your 8-hour-long Expo course. It's awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, what I'm doing wrong here? Cannot find my module.class. Oh, Expo, I think package, this is the package. Expo modules settings. Ooh, what was that one before? So I'm gonna do a Control Z a bit. The package was expo.module.myModule. I think that's very important. So I'm gonna leave a class here. I'm gonna remove everything that is inside the class. I'm gonna take a little bit different approach. And now I'm gonna go to the clean example here for Kotlin. Is this the Kotlin file? Yes. And only add the things inside the class, because I want to keep the same name. I want to keep the same package name. As we can see, this is important. And here in the name should also be my module. Function get theme, simply return system. Okay, I think now it's gonna work. Let's try to do npx expo run Android. Okay, it's opening on Android. Let's see if it works on Android as well. What we expect is also theme system, because we have hard-coded on the native side, on the Kotlin side, that the function getTheme will return the string system. That was for us just to get started, but the next step in our module is to actually get, set, and persist the theme on the native side. So for iOS, To read the values on iOS, we can look for the user defaults string under the key theme and fall back to system if there isn't any. So what you do is you'd go ahead and look at the user defaults in Swift documentation. You're gonna open the documentation. I don't even know how the documentation for iOS looks, but this user defaults with the defaults of a system. We can store default objects. We can read default objects. So I'm not gonna go a lot into details here because that's not my area of expertise. So I'm going to simply follow the documentation, the tutorial from Expo here. To set the value, we are gonna use the user defaults.set method to update that field. So that means that inside our Swift file of our module, when we want to set the theme, we are going to call this one. When we want to read the theme, we're going to call this one. Okay, so let's copy these two functions and go ahead in our iOS directory, my module Swift, and replace the existing get theme with the two functions that we just copied. I think that's the benefit of working on the Swift file in Xcode, because it will show that the user defaults is not imported. So if, for example, we would go ahead and open, where is Xcode? Here, user defaults. Do we need to import it? No, we don't need to import it actually. So again, when we will call a function setTheme from our JavaScript side, if the application is running on iOS, this function on the Swift function on the iOS side is going to be called, and this function is using the user default class from iOS and is writing the theme that we have sent from the JavaScript side. It's writing it in the user defaults for the key theme. Now, when we try to read that theme, it's using the same user default, but this time it's reading stuff. So it's reading the key, the value for the key theme. If there is nothing, it falls back to the system. We have to do the same for our Android side. So Android, my module Kotlin. Instead of hard coding the get theme to return system, we need to read it. And on Android, that is going to happen using the shared preferences. So the same logic, but what we have to do here, it's a lot. So we need to import Android context, shared preferences, right? What do we currently have here? Module and module definition. So we need only the context and shared preferences on top. Let's do that here. Then we have two functions, the set theme that is using get preferences, which is a function that we define below. Put string, oh my god, Android is always a mess, so I'm not even going to try to understand it. I'm going to copy these two functions. I'm going to put them into my module definition. So these are the set theme function and the get theme function, but we also have in our class, we also have defined the context and a function called get preferences. So that should be after our definition method, like here inside our class. Context, when we call get context. So that was on Android. Now it's time to define these two functions, get theme and set theme, on our JavaScript side, or better say on the TypeScript. For that, we're going to go into the source index, and here we only expose the get theme function. So if, for example, we're going to go into the example right now, and we're going to try to call my module dot set theme, we see that it's not here because we did, even though we created these functions on the native side, we didn't create them on our TypeScript side. So similar to how we have here get theme, I'm not even gonna look there. Let's think how to do it. For example, we're gonna have a set theme function that will get the theme as a string. It will return void or maybe nothing, and we'll call my module dot set theme, and here we'll send this theme from here. Is that correct? Set theme string, and the return is void. Maybe we can be more specific, void, to avoid, oh, you see, that's the problem. It shouldn't be returned, or should it be returned? Now in the example application, we can use these new methods from my module. For example, we can have a text change theme to, and then we're gonna have three text box to light. We're gonna have one for dark and another text for system. So we have change theme to light, dark, and system. When we press on this light, on press, I want to simply call my module dot set theme with a value light. Is it light? Yes. The same thing when we press on the next, in a way, button. When we on the next one is going to be dark, and lastly, when we press on the system, we're gonna set the theme to system. Okay, I tried to press it, and it said that set theme is not a function. Why? Even though we created, we need to rebuild the example project to start using them. So I'm gonna stop the execution there, and the best way is going to probably be rebuilding or pre-building our project using npx expo pre-build. That will update the iOS and Android directory of the example, and then we can do npx expo run iOS to run this project on iOS. Same thing for Android, npx expo run Android. Okay, then emitting changes, all right. Hello, France. So the application have been rebuilt here. So if I press, we see that the theme currently is system, both on Android and iOS. If on iOS, I'm gonna press on light, nothing changes. But if I reload my application, we see that the theme updates to light. Similarly, if I press on dark and then reload, it's updated to dark. And on Android, let's test. If I press light and reload, it's updated to light, dark, reload, dark, and the same thing with system. So that's good. That's the first step. And our theme doesn't update in real time, or it doesn't listen to updates, because we are calling this get theme. We're calling this get theme when the application renders, so that's why we have to do this reload. But that's going to be our next steps, to send events from the native side to our React Native and to listen on the React Native to these updates and update some values. So that's going to be the next step, emit change events for the theme value. But give me 1 second, I'm going to be back and we will continue. Okay, so coming back to this, when something happens on the native side, we would want to somehow update and make sure that we can change things on the React Native side, on the JavaScript side. So to do that, we can use events to describe what events our module can emit, and then we will call the send event function to send this event from the native side, from Swift and Kotlin, and then on the JavaScript side we will subscribe to these events. So we're gonna start with the iOS native side. The changes that we have to do is we need to define the event that can be sent. Events on change theme, that's the first step. So going to iOS, my module, after the name we have to define the events on change theme. When we call this function set theme, let's send an event called on change theme and send the updated theme there. So this is only defining the event, and here is triggering the event. So we trigger the event when we call the user default, set, and theme. Okay, that's on the iOS side. Now on the Android native side, events payload are represented as a bundle instance on Android, which we can create using bundle of function. Again, on there we will define the events at the top. So let's go Android source Java my module. After the name, let's define it here, events on change theme. Now in the set theme function, we want to trigger that event. We're gonna do that using this send event. So in the set theme, after we added the preferences, we're going to use Expo settings module. No, it should be my module dot send event. So this is the name of a module class, then send event on change theme, which we declared here. And the values inside that is going to be theme with the value that we set it currently. Let's check if we need to change anything else. I don't see that, so probably that's it. Now on the TypeScript side. On the TypeScript side, we need to define an event emitter and a type that will contain the payload or the data that that event is going to send. So let's go to the source index.tsx. At the top, start by defining this emitter, and we will import it, event emitter, from Expo Modules script. Is it Expo Module? No, Expo Modules core. Expo Modules core. Event emitter, my module. Now here we define a TypeScript type to specify what values our theme change event will send, and is going to send an object where we will have a theme. Now we will create a function called add theme listener. This is going to be the way or a function that we will call from the JavaScript side to subscribe to these events. Add theme listener, we expect a listener function. And when something happens in that event emitter, we're gonna call the listener that is going to be received here. We're gonna see that in 1 second. To better understand this add theme listener, we're gonna go back in our example application and see how we can use this event listener on our React Native side. So in the example app.tsx, What we want to do is we want to subscribe to events to when the theme has changed. For that, we're going to use a use effect to subscribe to changes when this component mounts. So for that, we need the use effect with empty dependency list. Then we're going to do, we have to call on my module, we have to call add theme listener. Here we need to provide a listener. So the listener is going to be a callback function. Like what function should we call when the event is emitted? We can simply do a console log event and check what happens there. I'm going to go ahead and rebuild because the rest of the changes are going to happen on the React Native side, so will be easier to manage. So for our event that we wrote on the native side to take effect, we're going to have to pre-build the application again to update the iOS and Android directory. And we're going to do run iOS and run Android to rebuild the native side projects. For Android, something didn't work. For iOS, it worked. So for iOS, we're gonna, when our application mounted, we added a theme listener, and when the event is going to be sent from the native side, we're going to console log. And remember, the event on the native side is being triggered when we call this set theme function. So let's simply press on one of these buttons because that's when we call the set theme function. So if I send it, we see that the event is being logged here. Okay, but what happened on Android there? My module, this. This is the Kotlin side. Okay, most probably I forgot to import the bundle of. After share preferences, I needed to import bundle of function. So let's try again by doing npx expo pre-build and then run Android. Okay, build successful. Our application is starting here on Android. And if I press on, for example, dark here, it should trigger, but it doesn't. Why? Oh, it was connected with this one, so the logs are simply here, but it works. So, for example, now on our React Native side, having this possibility to subscribe to events, what we can do is we can save const theme, current theme in a state, use state. We're going to default this to the get theme, like we're going to call get theme initially. And also we're going to subscribe, like every time the theme changes, we're going to do set theme, the setter is called set theme with event.theme, and it's type with TypeScript. Now here I'm going to simply change the value that we display. It's not going to be from the module, but it's going to be from the state theme here. So if I change here, set doesn't exist. You see that it changes automatically there. System dark light. So now we saw how to subscribe to events that are emitted from the native side. One more thing is that this add event listener will give us the subscription back called subscription. And when we start listening for subscriptions, we need to clear them out when the component unmounts. So I'm gonna return a function that will call subscription.remove. This way we make sure that we don't have memory leaks when using our application. When reloading, the subscription is going to be removed, and then when we mount it, it will be created again. Perfect. So far it's going well. The next step is going to be to improve the type safety with enums, because right now what we can do is we can have here another text like with a wrong value that you might not want to be able to set as a theme. So if I'm gonna try to press on it, it's going to set it as a theme. In our case, we don't want that. We want only these three values to be available, and we can do that using enums. For that, we're going to have to start by defining this enum on the iOS native side in the Swift file. And the theme, where is it? Here, the theme is defined as enum inside our class. So let's go ahead and open iOS my module Swift. Not in the definition, but after the definition, we are creating the theme. And this enum, we are going to replace with a parameter of a set theme function. So instead of string, we're going to have a theme. And here in the get theme, instead of returning a string, we're going to return a theme, right? I'm not sure why they didn't change it here. Maybe it's going to give us, it's not going to be able to cast these user defaults to a theme, so that's why. But instead of returning here system, we can try to access it like theme dot, how's it called? Theme dot system raw value. Okay, that's how you access the raw value of the system here. Oh, and we need to change it here as well when we send the event or when we are using it, because it's an enum. Accessing the value should be theme.raw value here when we set it, and as well when we send the event, also raw value. Anything else? Maybe not. So I'm still thinking that this is going to give me an error, because even though I want to return a theme, this might be casted might be the type of it is string. So we'll see. If it gives me errors, I'm gonna move it back to string. Now the same thing on Android native module. What I have to do is I need to import Kotlin enumerable. So on the my module Kotlin, let's import this enumerable. We define the enum at the end of a file, even outside the class. Class theme value string. It can be light, dark, or system. And we're gonna take this theme, and in the set theme, we're gonna type the parameter. In the set theme function, we're gonna type the parameter not with string, but with an actual theme. And that's why we need theme.value, and here as well, theme.value. And in get theme, we're gonna access it like this as the default. Anything else? Hopefully not. Now it's on the TypeScript side. On the TypeScript side as well, we need to define a type in the index.txt. We define our type that can have the value light, dark, or system. And here in the theme change event, it's no longer gonna be a string, but it's going to be a theme. In the get theme as well, it's going to be, I guess, a theme. A theme. And here as well, parameter theme. Now, if we go back to our example app.tsx, we're gonna see that the wrong value TypeScript is already suggesting that, hey, you cannot do that. And I'm gonna remove it. And we can try to rebuild our project for iOS and Android. So npx expo pre-build. And run iOS. Are there specific native features which have challenges with Expo modules? I don't know. I don't think so. And yeah, the problem there with get theme on iOS in Swift is indeed should be get theme, a string here. Let's try again. And the same thing for Android. Did I rebuild it already or not? Run Android. So now it works as it was working before, but it also has proper type validation for using enums for the theme value. That, like, especially if you're building an open source library, having a very strict API with very strict types is going to prevent like a lot of errors, because you're building the library, but you don't know how people will try to use it. So maybe someone will send a different value and you want to prevent that from happening. So with a strict type definition, you're going to solve yourself a lot of problems and issues opened on your library. Perfect. So congratulations, we have created our first simple yet not trivial Expo module for Android and iOS, and we can continue to the next tutorial to learn how to create a native view. Exactly. Now what we have done is we created a native module that doesn't provide UI functionalities, but it provides us with native functionalities, or let's say, being able to call native functions like set theme and get theme and listening for update. In the next step, what we want to do is we want to develop a native view. A native view is something that we can render on the screen. For example, think about camera that you render here. A camera that you would render in your React Native tree, that is a native view because it is implemented on Android and iOS natively using their native platform specific library. So that's what we are going to build right now, a native view. Let's go ahead and move to the next tutorial. Should I go ahead and do a git status? Let's do my first native module. And I'm thinking to continue working in the same file, even though the tutorial is recommending us to create a new one. I will try to continue working with the same module. Like my module is going to be both a module and is going to have like native views as well. It's not that you have to choose like one or another, it's just what you are implementing. So if we go in this tutorial, creating a native view, in this tutorial, we're going to build a module with native view that will render a web view. A web view is a nice way to render web URLs, like building, let's say, a browser, or in your application, if you have some screens that are not yet implemented natively, you can simply wrap them around a web view and render your website there. That's a bit of a trick to render web applications on native side. So we're going to build our custom web view that is going to use on Android web view, and on iOS is going to use this web view component. For more details, you can look at the documentation here. That's how it loads. That's how it will open a URL, and we will write our native module that is going to allow us to interact with these platform-specific APIs. WebView for Android, and the other one also WebView for iOS. Let's go ahead to the first step is to initialize a new module. As I said, I'm not going to do that because it takes a lot of time to build a project. So next step is going to be set up our workspace. It was encouraging us to delete the pre-existing things. Okay. Then we're going to find the following files and replace them with a provided minimal boilerplate. Expo Web View module. That is our iOS, right? iOS. My module. Let's create this Expo Web View module. I'm wondering if having a different name is going to work. Expo Web View module.swift. So let's try. In iOS, let's create a new file. Expo Web View module .swift and let's add this minimal code. Name Expo Web View, and we define a view that probably here we're going to implement it later. Okay, now for Android the same. We need a file Expo Web View module Kotlin with this name. Web View. So in Android, source Java, in this folder, let's create a new file, Expo Web View module.kotlin. We're going to paste this code, but the package should be updated. It should be expo.modules. Not web view, but my, as you can see here, it's called my module. My module. Expo web view. Hopefully having a different name is going to work. We're going to check. We're going to see. Okay, now in source index, we have here everything from the theme Let's create this expo webview.tsx file. Expo webview.tsx file. Inside the file, we're gonna export this one. So it has some props. Native views, React Native props, require native view manager expo web view. This is the name that it will try to access. And here we'll render the native view by sending the props there. And in the index.tsx, we need to simply export the web view and the props of that web view. So somewhere at the top, this is for web view. Now we can go ahead in our app.tsx, import this web view and render it on the screen. Let's try to do that. Let's open example application. And I'm going to actually copy paste this one just to have like a very minimal and simple application. What we are doing is we are importing the web view from Expo web view, but I think it's from the name of the module is actually my module, and it's called the web view, the component. Now we are rendering this native view with a simple background color purple at this moment. Let's try to, after these changes, to rebuild and run our application on iOS and Android. So npx expo pre-build. And then let's do run iOS here and run Android here. Let's see if I didn't make any typos and if it will work the way we are combining it with the previous code. On iOS, it was built. If we see, yeah, something isn't working correctly. Let's see on Android. It didn't even want to build. Okay, let's go ahead and check the iOS. Require view manager adapter was not found in the UI manager. That would be interesting. Require native view manager. Expo web view was not found in the UI manager. Got so much error from the first hour. Yeah, I understand. Require Expo web view. Expo web view. For iOS, Expo web view, module, Expo web view. What if we, in this case, have to do a pre-build dash clean? A pre-build dash clean will first remove iOS and Android directory and regenerate them from scratch. Now, if I do run iOS, oh, now it might take a bit more time, actually. But name Expo web view. I think that's important, like we name Expo Web View because that's how it requires native view manager Expo Web View. Let's have a look at the Android side. What failed there? Expo Web View model, not enough information to infer type variable t. Unresolved reference Expo Web View. That is in Android, source Java Expo View Web View module. Patience is a must for mobile development. Yes, that's very true. So yeah, if something is not working, usually I go and double check if I didn't make any mistakes or if nothing jumps into iOS Expo Web View module Swift. I didn't have them created, but I created it separately, so I'm not sure if it registered correctly because I might have to do it in my module Swift. But I don't know. Expo Web View name, Expo Web View. Cannot find Expo Web View in scope. So something here, Expo Web View, cannot find it in scope. Expo Web View.self. Expo. Expo Web View modules. Expo Web View. What is this Expo Web View.self? Maybe it's actually going to be easier to just recreate it from scratch. Expo Web View.class. Should it be here my module.self? I don't know. Yeah, let's go ahead and do it from scratch. I guess it would be easier. So if I go back here to my terminal, clear ls, we have my module. Let's go ahead and start by creating a new module called Expo Web View. Maybe now it's going to also show us what files we were missing or something like that. I'm gonna go with all the defaults. And while it's installing the dependencies, I'm gonna go grab one more coffee and we're continuing. Okay, I'm back. And I see that our new modules has been initialized. Let's go ahead and open it in Visual Studio Code by running code Expo web view. Okay, now from here we want to remove web view types, or maybe we can even run these commands in our terminal. And now we are left with, in the source, with Expo WebView TSX index, and on iOS we have this WebView Swift and WebView module. Okay. Let's go ahead and find the Expo WebView module Swift. Expo WebView module Swift, and here we're going to write this WebView. Yeah, that was what was missing, the WebView Swift file. We had the WebView module, but the WebView Swift, we didn't have it. In the same thing in our Android, in the Kotlin, Android source Java, in the module itself, let's remove everything and only leave this one. And yeah, again, as I see, that's what we were missing, the Expo WebView file. We don't have to do anything at this moment. We're gonna have to go to the source index, remove everything and export only the things from our WebView file. That will define the properties of our native view and will render the native view by rendering the native component. Okay. Now inside our example application, we can simply go ahead and where example application app.tsx, let's remove everything and render the web view with a background color purple. Now we are ready to run npm run build in one terminal to build our library. And from another one, we're gonna go ahead and do cd example and run npx expo run iOS. And from another one, it's going to be npx expo run Android to test both iOS and Android. The Android is malformed. Would you like to reinitialize it? Yes. Why it was malformed? Got some chocolate for some brain powers. So for Android, let's see what's going to be faster, iOS or Android. I think I'm gonna have to do run Android again. It got stopped at npm install. All right, so it was built, and as we can see, this is a new project, a new example. Let's go ahead and open it. And I hope to see the purple background. Here it is, we see the purple background. So our very custom and very basic native view that we created with our custom module is working on iOS, and let's double check on Android as well. We see something not properly working for Android. Why is that? Should we do an np? Oh, because we are not in the example folder. Okay, npx expo run Android. That was the problem. I was not in the example folder. Now build failed. Why? Could not resolve Expo web view. I'm afraid that I when regenerating this, I messed up a lot. Yes, I did. When running that in Android, I messed up a lot of things. Oh boy. And that's quite bad because git status git stash Android. I'm gonna have to redo it because I run Android in the root folder and it messed with my Android folder of a package. So I'm gonna do a git stash. And again, from this tab, I'm gonna remove the files. My bad. I'm going to replace this WebView module Swift inside iOS directory. WebView module Swift. Replace for Kotlin as well in Android source Java module. That was the part that I messed up previously. Yeah. Then the index.txt in the source index, remove everything. And in the next one, WebView TSX here, like this. And lastly, in the app.tsx, example app.tsx, remove everything, put it here. So now, just to be on the safe side, I'm gonna do git add git commit. Basic changes, just to, if I mess something up, to be able to revert back to this one. And now, yes, we can run again npm run build. We're gonna have to, from the example directory, go ahead and do run iOS, and here go into the example and do npx expo run Android. I didn't cd in the example when running this command previous time. That's That was the bad part. So on iOS, it was very fast because the native side was already built already. Now we're waiting for Android example application to be built as well. Hello Decodes, how are you doing? Welcome to the channel. If you're the first time here, probably that's not the best live stream to check out our tutorials, because in a lot of tutorials we are actually prepared and are building mobile applications. Today it's more of exploring something new also for me. We are exploring Expo Modules. So if you're interested in building mobile applications with React Native, check out our tutorials on the channel, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna find something to learn. So yeah, welcome to the channel. All right, our Android application has also been rebuilt, and I hope to see the purple background as well. Okay, on Android, it's also purple. That's perfect. Now we have the basic structure, the boilerplate to build a custom native view. And in our case, that's going to use the platform's web view to render a website, a URL. So let's continue by adding the system web view as a sub view of our purple background, this one that we created. So we're gonna start with a hard-coded URL. On iOS, what do we have to do? In the Expo web view, on iOS, Expo web view, here is where we will define our custom web view. This will be used as a native component. Make sure to inherit from Expo web view, which inherits, as I read here, Expo web view inherits from Expo view, and Expo view inherits from RCT view, from React Native, which finally extends from UI view on iOS. Okay, so we need to import WebKit, right? At the top. We need to define this web view. And required when initializing our custom web view, we are going to have to configure the web view that we have defined here and define it as a sub view of our component. So let's put this code here. So when we initialize, we add the sub view web view with a URL, with a hard-coded URL, and we render it, we load it in our web view. Okay, we need to do the same on Android, and on Android we're going to use the web view imported from here. So let's go into the Android source Java Expo web view. Let's see what do we need to import here. Up context, Expo view context. These two things, the WebKit web view and web view client. We're gonna import these two here. And I'm gonna copy the whole class to replace it with my default one. So Expo web view, it creates the web view, adjust a bit the layout parameters, adds it as a child, and loads the pre-built URL. Now we can go ahead and I think we will have to rebuild. So I'm gonna do npx expo pre-build. And run on iOS. And the same thing on Android. Now what we expect to happen is instead of this purple background, I expect the screen to load the hard-coded URL that we provided there. Okay, on iOS it's already running, bundling, and that's it. Here we have a web page that we loaded in the web view using this URL hard-coded on the Swift side. And the same thing on Android. If we check the Android as well, it's the web page that we hard-coded and loaded in the web view in the Kotlin on the native side for Android. The next step is going to be to be able to adjust this URL from our React Native site. For example, in the example app.tsx, when rendering this web view, I want to be able to send the URL to open, not a hard-coded one. So that's going to be our property that we're going to send to our custom native view. To set a property on the view, we'll need to define the property name and etc. inside the Expo module. In this case, we're going to reach in and access web view property directly for convenience, but in many real-world cases, you will likely want to keep this logic inside the Expo web view class and minimize the knowledge that Expo web view module has about the internals of. Okay, didn't understand a lot here, but within the prop setter block, we can access the view and the prop. Note that we specify the URL of type URL. The Expo module API will take care of converting strings to the native URL type for us. That's good. So starting with the Swift, in the module itself, when we define the view, inside that we have to define the property URL that will set the URL of a web view. So if I open iOS directory, not in example but here, and not the view but the module itself, where we define the module here, inside there we need to define the property URL. Property URL is going to be of type URL, and if it's different than the existing one, we are going to load it there. In Android, what do we have to do in Android? That also should be in the Android source Java, in the module.kotlin. Here, somewhere, prop URL, view URL, and then we load the URL to string. Now in TypeScript, we need to define that there is a property called URL on our view props. So source index.tsx, maybe not index, but expo view.tsx. Here we have props that currently extend the view props that has style and so on. But we need some custom props as well, not only the view props, but a URL that is optional and is of type string. Now when rendering the native view, it will simply pass all the props down there, including the URL. The last step is gonna go in the example iOS, not example iOS, but example app.tsx. When rendering this web view, I want to also send the URL here. We see that we already can do that. And if I'm going to do notjust.dev as the URL there, and then if I'm going to go ahead and rebuild the example project, run iOS, and now let's do the same, run Android. On Android it didn't work. Why? On iOS it worked, but Android, what did I do wrong there? In the module, probably I have to import something there, so let's double check. On the Android side, the URL, yeah, exactly. We need to import the URL. Let's do npx expo pre-build. And then npx expo run Android. So on iOS, we see that our custom component, custom web view, is opening the URL that we sent from here. And if we change it to, for example, Google, we should see that it refreshes and loads Google. Perfect. So now we have built a very simple browser inside Expo with a custom component for the native view. Let's see if on Android it also works. Android emulator, yes, it's here. It also works correctly. Perfect. Let's follow the tutorial and see what would be the next step. Add an event to notify when the page has loaded. Yes, the view callbacks allow developers to listen for events on components. We're typically registered through props on the component. For example, image on load. We can use the event definition component to define an event for our web view. We'll call it on load as well. So what we want to do is if we want to expose a onload property here, say to the React Native side, that will be called whenever the component website loaded, whenever the URL has been loaded, what we need to do is we need to send this event from the native side. So that's what we're going to do in this step. First, on the iOS, we need to implement did finish and make Expo web view extend navigation delegate. We can then call onload from the delegate method. What? Okay, didn't really understand a lot, but let's do that. We need to make sure that our Expo web view extends from this navigation delegate. So I'm gonna go into the iOS view. So besides Expo view, it will also extend this delegate. onload is going to be event dispatcher. The super clips web view add subview. Here we need to save it the web view navigation delegate. Web view navigation delegate is going to be self, so that's probably going to expose this onload on the web view. We don't need to hard code and load this URL, so I'm going to remove that because we are loading that through the Expo view module here based on the property. We're calling webview.load. So here we don't need it anymore. And we need this function webview. What? I don't know what's that, but let's just copy paste it after the layout subviews. Webview did finish. Well, basically it's calling this onload, it's dispatching this onload event based on the URL that the web view. I don't know, that's too, it's some technical implementation of Swift UI. Hopefully it's gonna work. Now we need to indicate in Expo web view model that the view has an onload event. So above a property URL, we have to define the onload event. So in the module here, .swift above URL property, we're gonna say that this view has also the onload event. For Android, on Android we need to override the onPage finished function. We can then call the onload event handler that we define in the module. So that's going to be a lot. Android, source, Java. On the web view, we have a web view, context app context. Okay. Then at the top, at the top of this class, we are defining the onload event dispatcher. Onload event dispatcher on the top. Then we create the web view, match parent, web view client, add view. Here are some changes. When we create the web view client, we are overriding the onPage finished. In this situation, we are not overriding anything. So I'm going to have to put here some code to override some functions of the web view client. And that function is going to be this override function on page finished, because what we want to do is we want to call the onload event with a URL that was loaded. And I need to remove this load URL because we again are loading it through the property. Let's check if we need to import anything. Yes, we need to import this event dispatcher above Expo view. Probably that's it. Okay, let's continue. We need to indicate in the module that the view has an onload event, similar to iOS. Inside the Expo web view module here, above a property URL, we're going to define the event onload. Now on the TypeScript side, that event payloads are included with a native event property of the event, so it can access the URL from the onload event. We would read event native event URL. So we define a type onload event inside source Expo web view above props onload event will send us a URL, and the properties will contain another property for the onload callback function. Event will have a native event of type onload event. And that's it. Now in the example application, app.tsx, this onload will give us the event, and we can also access here event.nativeEvent.url with type definition, everything perfect. Now let's try to rebuild and run our application again. For iOS first, and here for Android. Dominic, we are learning Expo Modules API, writing native modules for React Native application using Expo Modules. So, website loaded. That's the callback from iOS, and this one is from Android. So that means that we successfully are sending the event on our view as well, and we are receiving this through a callback property that we can send here with a native event. Nice. This way we can have like two ways communications from React Native to the native side through properties, and from the native side back to React Native through events. And yeah, you can build a browser UI around this component. I'm not planning to build it, but let's try to see this browser UI that was done using our custom native library. So now, without any changes on the library itself, we're going to try to change to only we don't have a status bar, right? Okay, for the status bar, I'm gonna comment it out. But yeah, we see here a simple browser that we can go ahead and navigate to notjust.dev. Enter, and we are loading this one. And it's using the web view, which is our custom native view. Nice, perfect. All right, so congratulations, you have created your first Expo module with a native view for Android and iOS. If you enjoyed this tutorial and haven't done native modules yet, try the Create Native. We have done that already. All right, so that was our native views as well. I think we're gonna have to stop here, but I recommend you to continue these tutorials and documentations. The next one is explaining how we can create a native module that also has a config plugin. A config plugin is basically some instructions on how your library or your module, what changes does it have to make on the iOS and Android application when installing it into a project. For example, in some cases, installing a library, you need to enable some permissions, or you need to do some changes on the Android manifest and so on. And in some cases, this data should be variable, meaning that the developer of the application that is using your application, is using your library, they should provide this information. For example, the string for the permission, when we ask for a permission, this is something that developer of application should specify. So that's where config plugins come into play. And using these config plugins, for example, I'm going to show you an example of a config plugin. You probably saw them when installing some libraries. Yes, this is the config plugin that you define in app.json. For example, let's check Expo Camera. Expo Camera is an example of a package that also has a config plugin. So using the config plugin in app.json, we can specify strings for camera permission, microphone permission, and other configuration. And then the native module, Expo Camera, is reading these configurations and is adjusting the native side project when the application is being built. So if you need to do that, you can have a look at these configurations here as well. Another use case where native modules come into play is, for example, wrapping around third-party native libraries. For example, you might find two libraries, one for iOS, one for Android, that does something that you need. So instead of reinventing the wheel, you don't want to code it yourself. You want to simply use these libraries. For example, here Expo is showing an example of charting library that this one is for Android, and someone developed based on that one, based on the Android chart, he developed the charts for iOS. So that means that these charts, they're native for iOS and Android, and they have a very similar UI. Now using a simple native library that wraps around these native packages, you can expose them to your React Native application. And here in this tutorial, you can check how you can do that. Most of the things are very similar to what we did today. The only thing is that your package will also have a dependency. For example, the Android package will have a dependencies on this library, and for iOS, it's going to depend on charts. And yeah, after everything is done, you can look into this documentation to check how you can integrate it with your application. As we saw in the beginning, in the Getting Started guide, there are two ways to use a library in your application. If native library, you only need it locally in the project that you're building. When creating it, you can create it with --local, and this will create the native library inside your project. So in that situation, it's going to be very easy to use it. But if you want to either use it in multiple projects or you want to deploy it as an NPM package, you can check out here in the using a standalone Expo module to see how you can configure the monorepo where you have your application and your libraries separate in separate repos. And I think also here it is the documentation on how you can publish this library to NPM. It's very simple. You just log in and do publish, and then you can go ahead and do npx expo install and the name of your published library. In that situation, you'll be able to use it in any project, and not only you, but others as well. So that was the Expo modules exploration. I had this on my to-do list for a very long time, and I'm very happy that I finally got to work with it. Really, it's a quite developer-friendly experience because even though we had some challenges at the beginning, I'm pretty sure these challenges are not something, it's not the problem of Expo modules. It's the problem of my lack of experience working with native side applications, with Android Studio, Kotlin, iOS, and so on. But anyway, till the end, we managed to do it, and I'm pretty happy with how everything works. I'm gonna look more into that and see maybe we can create a proper tutorial on the channel. What do you say? Sergey, hello. Можно ли с вами в плане разработки приложения, доставки товаров, если вам интересно? To be honest, I'm not doing freelancing at this moment, like consulting work. But feel free to reach out with project details. If it's something interesting, we might be able to do something. Okay, guys. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to see you next week with an